WSFA 12 News presents a First Alert Weather Special. April 27th, the Unforgotten Tragedy. Sponsored by the Vance Law Firm, Alabama Power, and Max Credit Union.
The day before, we heard from the National Weather Service that there was a potential for some bad weather. And they felt pretty certain because there'd been some bad weather in Mississippi the night before. So the warning was that we potentially could have some tornadoes in Alabama. Never did we suspect that we would have 62 tornadoes.
Well, it started at 4:30 a.m. I got a call from Tuscaloosa County EMA that we were under a tornado warning. And certainly the lead up to that had been tremendous, so we knew it could be a bad day of weather. Later, the EMA director called me and said that we had some tornado damage in the outside parts of the city, and then decisions were made to not open the schools that day. And many businesses had gone ahead and made some decisions anyway not to open or to close early that day. That actually became a saving grace for us. There was no escaping that something was coming, and you could certainly feel it literally in the air. But none of us had an idea to what extent was awaiting us.
I was on the phone with Lauren first thing that morning. The sun came up. They'd had a storm earlier that morning, so I talked to her through that. I remember vividly being in my backyard, walking around talking to her on the phone, and we discussed. She was worried because Coleman had had some bad weather. She was worried about that. And then I told her I'll pack the littles up, which is meant I was meaning her younger siblings, and we'll come up there and stay with you because she had to take an exam that night. She had to stay in Tuscaloosa. So she said, "No, Mom, don't do that. I don't want you driving." Then it got to be 4:45, and I saw that the storm warnings were coming on. I had the television on at home in Wetumpka, and we had talked about where she was, what she was supposed to do, and where her safe spot was, and to be prepared. She was still studying with her laptop in her safe space. She had not left that safe spot on the bottom floor most of the day. I texted her, like, as I was listening to the TV. We saw it coming, and I was talking to her, and Parker said, "Mama, it's big. It's got little tornadoes coming off of it." It had little sprouts, coming off the side of it. And she said, "Mama, I'm scared." And she could see a window from where she was, and it was completely black, she said. I said, "Baby, just get your head down." I knew where that camera was. I want to say it was downtown Tuscaloosa on Greensboro at top of a bank building. I knew exactly where that camera was, so I knew the route that thing was taking, and it was massive. And I just kept saying, "Baby, get your head down, get your head down. It's headed right towards you." And she would say, "Mama, I'm scared. Mama, I'm scared." And I think her speech got faster as mine got faster as it got closer to me. Our last conversation was, "Mama, I'm scared." And me saying, "It's okay, baby, get your head down. Get your head down, it's coming right towards you." And then the phone cut off. I knew in that instant. I just knew. A mother just knows. I ran out my front door, and I said, "God, please don't take her." And I fell on my knees, and I knew that it was over. It took hours to find her body, but I knew in that moment that it was over. I want her to be remembered for her perseverance, her enduring heart. And if she loved you, you knew it, and she gave you 100%. If you were blessed enough to know her, you felt loved. You felt like you were the only person in the world when she was talking to you. One day, I want us to be in Disney World on April 27th. That was Lauren's favorite place. Nothing made her happier than to be at Disney World. I have to tell myself to remember the good things, to not remember that day, that night that she was gone. I have to remember the good times we had with her here. I can't let that day dominate my memories of her. She was so young. She was 21. And I think people see that you're not promised tomorrow. If you would have looked at Lauren that morning there in the morgue, there was nothing wrong with her. She had a drop of blood right here on her cheek that was, I don't even think it was hers. She looked like she was asleep. There were so many other bodies that had been hurt in the storm that, that were really messed up, but hers was perfect. And it said on her death certificate that she died of a blunt force head trauma. So I am just adamant about bike helmets, baseball helmets. Everybody has these sitting in their garage. All kids have bicycle helmets. I tell my kids at school, make sure you have your helmets. Make sure you tell your parents that you have to have a helmet ready. And I mean, I even had given out all my helmets, and when the tornadoes came through downtown Wetumpka, I put a cast iron pot on my head, but anything to protect your head, because you don't realize just how most of the deaths in tornadoes or hurricanes or any kind of damage like that are from blunt force head trauma. So you have to protect your head.
They would call me and they would say, Governor, one is hit in Coleman, or one is hit in Hackleburg and Phil Campbell, or one is hit in Rainsville. I mean, it was just one after another, and I said, Lord, when is this day going to stop?
And it's so hard on me as being from Tuscaloosa and loving Tuscaloosa like I do. It makes it even more difficult being the governor.
We decided to go out into the field and see it for ourselves. And when we got to the viaduct on University Boulevard that really kind of was the midpoint of the destruction through the heart of Tuscaloosa, you could see southwest to northeast, and it literally brought me to my knees. I'd never seen anything like that. People walking towards you who are bleeding, who quite frankly look like zombies. It was as if the hand of God had slammed down on the middle of our city.
I knew there was a storm coming, so I ran a few errands, got home before 2, and was watching TV, and thought, I need to call my son. He's in Troy. And I got on the computer, and I was talking to him on my little flip phone, little cell phone, and I could hear things popping, like a popping sound. And I told Matthew, I said, that could be trees popping. And I don't know, I guess it's just the Lord just said, go. And I just jumped up and ran down the hall and tried to, with Matthew on the phone the whole time, and tried to go. We had a door that went down into the basement, of our home and in the kitchen. And I tried to open the door, but it had already jammed. And just shaking, it wouldn't open. And I just stood, I just stood there amazed. I couldn't believe what was going on around me. Just things swirling around, the windows had burst out, and it was just chaos. And then something bumped me in the head, not really bad, but enough to get my attention. And I thought, I need to get out. So I got down beside the door and just prayed, and the Lord just took care of me. And after everything calmed down, I got up and looked around, and it was just so quiet and just so peaceful. And I got my purse and went out the front door, and it was just so shocking to see your neighbors, their homes just gone.
I was at work, USDL. They put everybody in shelters. We heard the tornado go over us. We were down there 20, 30 minutes, came up, was going back to my office. Someone yelled, Pleasant Grove is gone. So I immediately left to try to get to her, because she was at the house by herself. They had a blockade already at Pleasant Grove city limits, so I couldn't get in. Within a matter of minutes, there were hundreds of cars just parked where people were trying to get into Pleasant Grove. We stayed there all night, but the next morning when they moved the blockade, I was able to walk in, and I saw her standing there across from the house with a group of people. And I didn't yell, I just walked up behind her. And when she turned around, I had to catch her. That was like Katie said, it was great to hold her.
It's great to be held.
I was worried about her for months and months and months because she was terrified of a storm, having gone through what she did.
We will get a text message also from Mom saying, there's bad weather today, what's your plan? And so, we're like, we're going to go downstairs and we've got the kids and, they have their bicycle helmets and, we're good. And she's like, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
The southernism is everybody stands on the front porch and watches it go by. We're so used to it, I guess. But when you've gone through it, it's a completely different experience now. You really respect the unpredictability of weather.
I'm Nancy Myers, owner of Myers Country Acres, Middle Road, Eclectic. The morning started like any other morning. We get up and we do what we do around here. And about middle of the day, it got to feeling really muggy and just didn't feel quite right. Then we were under a tornado warning. We encouraged people to go somewhere else when we had bad weather because of mobile homes not being safe, but many people don't want to leave and they don't want to leave their pets, so they stayed. And around 8 o'clock, my husband went out on the front porch. We had already gotten in our closet. He went out on the front porch to check the weather, and he comes back in and jumps in the closet and says, we're fixing to be hit. And we were hit. This house felt like a box of Cracker Jacks being shaken for just an instant. And then it was all over, and everything was total darkness. I remember walking outside, and there's total darkness and total silence because no motors are running, no air conditioners are running, there's nothing on to make noise. It was total silence. I could hear people in the park hollering, help me. But you could hear the voices of them calling for help. But you couldn't see anybody, and it was really hard to find people, and some of them were buried under debris. My husband died in December, was a year ago, and he died remembering having to identify dead bodies. He never recovered from that. That was just a horrible memory that he kept. And we know that we were kind of fortunate in the fact that we had no more fatalities than we did. We had 4 people killed, but we had so many others injured and affected by the tornado, but they didn't lose their lives. After we started putting our part back together, one of the first things we did was put in a storm shelter, and we have it available now, and people are so much more willing to go to a storm shelter now because they've seen a tornado. Before, we couldn't get them to go to safety because they didn't realize how bad it was. But once you live through it, you're willing to go to a safe place.
Everywhere I went, there would be people from everywhere there. You cannot believe the goodness of people until you actually see it. And it didn't matter if you were black, white, rich, poor, those tornadoes, they weren't forgiving.
I got off at 5 o'clock that afternoon and come in, still warm, windy. We had dinner, we were sitting there, and then, so we turned the TV off. When y'all were on, I turned it on. I'm a junkie, I follow it. And we were watching, and then this one kicked up in Elmore County.
I actually was in bed listening to the weather, and Joel, he was watching TV in the great room, and our son was in the game room, and so we were kind of doing our own thing, but yet being attentive.
So I go to the game room, tell my son, I said, well, we need to go get in the closet.
I can remember my dad coming into the game room and saying, hey, you know, we need to get in the closet. I don't know if I had ever gone and sat in the closet for weather because you just never think that it's gonna happen to you.
Turn the TV on in the bedroom up loud enough so that we could hear what was going on, and we probably were in the closet for 2 minutes before it hit.
The noise of the debris ball, the sound was so loud. It was just a rumbling. The pressure was so bad that we thought our heads were going to explode. And of course, it seemed like a long time, but it was just seconds. So once it actually got to us and the roof, it just kind of exploded, basically. You know, the roof went off of the house, and, you know, I had prayed that it not take long. We had no idea, actually, what we were going to be dealing with until we could look out and see the woods.
Being an 18-year-old senior in high school, I've got everything laid out. I know exactly what's gonna happen, my whole life planned out, and then 15 seconds changed everything.
You know, we've always been very prideful, like, you know, we've never asked for help. We've always done things on our own and that kind of thing, but it really humbled us. You know, we had to have help. Every little thing. I mean, people brought us clothes, food, stuff for our dog. Now, when bad weather comes, I think I'm more fearful because I know what can happen. I have a bag with all of my important stuff.
Be prepared, have a plan, know where you need to go, and just be weather aware. I mean, y'all say it all the time, but pay attention.
Days out, we let people know, hey, something bad's coming on this day. So they have a time to plan. They have a way to communicate to their families. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to do to plan. We give them multiple options, multiple ways to get weather information.
I needed to do something to help raise funds, to raise a lot of funds, because people from one end of the state to the other was affected by that storm. We are constructing community tornado shelters all around the state. We're putting tornado warning systems in rural areas where there aren't any, and we'll help reconstruct homes. Donate what you can to the relief fund, Bow Bikes Bama, which all of the funds are controlled by the Alabama Governor's Disaster Relief Fund. It doesn't matter who needs help. We try to do what we can to put a little sunshine in somebody's cloud.
When you would go to these areas, I mean, they were already working. They were already taking care of each other. And so that was the thing that made me so proud of Alabama, because I realized what fine people we have in this state.
And it was a tough time. But Alabamians do what they do best, and that's build back stronger. And Coleman and Tuscaloosa and Phil Campbell and Hackleburg, they're all flourishing today.
The thing I've learned through this is whenever you think you can't do it, just keep going. just keep being forward-leaning, and that's what we were able to do. And that's why I think today this has been one of the model responses and recoveries to a natural disaster in our country's history.
April 27th, the Unforgotten Tragedy, sponsored by the Vance Law Firm, Alabama Power, and Max Credit Union.